Social Trinitarianism, your average evangelical Christian believer who has no either Catholic interest or either Greek Orthodox interest, so kind of a Protestant believer, that's what I'm focusing on right now, they might actually not find themselves naturally drawn to the Social Trinitarian model. And I actually have the definition part of the Social Trinitarianism. Maybe I can read that again first. That would have been pretty good. Orthodox Christian theology asserts that the one God is manifest in three persons. This term was generally used in the Latin West. Social Trinitarian thought argues that the three persons are each distinct realities, and this was generally presented in the East with the Greek term hypostasis from the First Council of Nicaea onward. Hypostasis was here employed to denote a specific individual instance of being, so the Trinity is composed of three distinct persons, or hypostases, which are in integral relation with one another. End quote. And I think that's a quote from Wikipedia, or no, it is at Britannica. That's Wikipedia. Okay, so Social Trinitarianism doesn't sound too terribly dangerous or heretical or anything like that, and that's part of what I'm saying in my commentary. However, I should be quick to remind you, right, you, your average garden variety evangelical believer who's listening to this YouTube video or watching this YouTube video or listening to this podcast, I need to remind you of what biblical Unitarian Christian Dr. Dale Tuggy wrote in his Stanford Encyclopedia entry on Trinity concerning some of the quote-unquote weaknesses of the Social Trinitarian model. So we're talking about trying to explain God, and there are different viewpoints that are put forth. That's why we call them models. I know some Christians are a little put off by this term model. When I keep using, I say Trinity model, and they say, what do you mean Trinity model? There's just what the Bible teaches, and that's it. There's no model. There's just the biblical perspective, and that's it. But I need to remind you, if you take all of the biblical data and put it on the table for examination, there's a lot of what we might recognize as equivocation or ambiguity in some of the texts and terminology related to the nature of God and Trinity. So there's not just one view that the Bible presents that we can walk away with. For instance, if we were to say Jesus is God in a church setting, and have everybody raise your hand and say, how do you interpret this phrase, Jesus is God? Which, by the way, doesn't show up in the Bible in verbatim, right? Jesus is God. But is a view that's held as a conviction, me included, by many, many believers, whether you're Catholic, Protestant, or Greek Orthodox, right? Jesus is God. All right, but if we were to ask the question, what does this mean to you? How do you interact with this term, this phrase, Jesus is God? You're going to get quite a bit of different explanation going on. Some people will say, like oneness Pentecostal might say, well, to me, Jesus is God means there's only one God and his name is Jesus. End, full stop. But the Trinitarians sitting next to him, I say, no, that's not quite right. Jesus is God means that Jesus is fully divine, just like God the Father. Meaning there is one God, but Jesus and God are both somehow, in a mysterious way, one with the same God. They're both equal in identity when it comes to God, and yet they are distinct in person, right? And so the oneness Pentecostal and the Trinitarian sitting next to him are going to have this argument and disagreement over this phrase, Jesus is God. Well, why is that the case? They're both reading from the same Bible, right? It's because of the equivocation on the word God.